Hello and welcome to ELL Plus with me, Samuel Quashie-Idun.
And me, Josefine Henneberg.
Our weekly news days covers the boroughs of Hackney, Tower Hamlets, Lewisham and Croydon. First on ELL Plus, the NHS winter crisis sends thousands marching to Downing Street.
Obvious point is this is a strike about pensions, and as Joanna said, you're thinking.
We speak to union members about the biggest strike to ever hit UK universities.
And an exclusive preview of a play that reveals Deptford's darkest secrets from 100 years ago.
Tens of thousands of people braved the rain on Saturday for emergency demo for what they say is a health service in crisis after one of the worst winters on record.
The campaigners say that cuts to budgets and increased demand has left the NHS on its knees. Our reporter Blair Jiang followed a protest group from Tower Hamlets as they marched on Downing Street.
The event, called NHS in Crisis, Fix It Now, was organized by the People's Assembly and Health Campaigns Together.
This demo was called as a response to the winter crisis, but actually what lots of people who work in the hospitals, this is my 35th year as a nurse, are saying every day feels like a crisis. Who's NHS?
The People's Assembly says that this is the NHS 70th birthday, and they want to celebrate its success. Nurses, doctors and patients, young and old, each had their own stories.
Well, we came to the march because I think it's very important that we get involved in trying to protect the NHS for our future, but very importantly for our children's future, and I think that's why they need to be here as well, because they have to have an understanding that something like the NHS is very important and it needs protecting, and at the moment I feel it's very much under threat.
Protesters were passionate about keeping a free national health service. We asked people what they thought about privatization.
It's privatised already. We should be under no illusion that NHS has been privatised, and they want an American-style insurance-based system like they have in the States, where lots of people go through life and die without any health care at all. That's what we want.
Actually, I was born in the days we didn't have an NHS. We had to struggle through life. Now we've got it, they're taking it away and they're going private.
Well done, everybody! Welcome to Downing Street! Our NHS! Our NHS! Our NHS!
People will not realise what they've lost until the NHS is gone, and by then it will be too late.
Now is the time to fund a proper pay rise for the staff of the NHS.
In response to the demonstration, the Department of Health and Social Care said the government was aware of the pressure facing the NHS, and it was given top priority in the recent budget with an extra £2.8 million allocated over the next 2 years.
It's pouring with rain. However, thousands of people have marched on Downing Street to make their protest. In July, it will be the 70th anniversary of NHS, and people here are hoping they will have something to celebrate. Blair Jiang for ELL Plus.
Following on from outrage from NHS cuts, Lewisham fights its own battle to save mental health services. You might remember we covered the protest against the cuts to the children's mental health services.
Well, this week, at a public meeting, MP Vicky Foxcroft said the cuts are an attack on the youth. Malika Fachrou was there along with anxious patients and parents.
If it was a broken arm, I'd take her to A&E. If it was a cold or a fever, I'd take her to the GP. But because it's mental health, we have to wait a year, and that is just...
This determined mother is one of the campaigners to stand up against the cuts. Lewisham Council refers to these cuts as savings, but the people who gather to protest against budget changes are extremely worried. what are the reasons that the Lewisham Council is referring to these changes as savings and saying that these savings will make camps actually more efficient, when there are a lot of people in this room saying or fearing about their youth, about the situation of camps.
So quite often is, well, they're given 1% here, but they're cutting 20% here. And the system in terms of the police, the courts, all of the system. If we invested that in early interventions, and just touching on the points of environmental health support is absolutely vital important.
So just imagine waking up one day and you feel really, really different. You don't understand it.
Former patients like Maggie know camps can save young adults and children from total breakdown.
I remember one day literally looking at my mum and going, who am I? And I remember thinking, I probably won't make it through life. But luckily I had camps, and I had a great therapist. I had really good support. And without that, I guarantee I probably wouldn't be here today.
2 weeks ago, there was a protest where the campaigners tried to speak to Lewisham MPs.
My child was waiting on the CAMS list for well over a year. He's still not been seen.
The campaigners plan to continue their fight against the cuts, and the battle still goes on. The campaign will be presenting on the 14th of February these hats to the council, hoping that they will change and reconsider their decision.
I do stand, united with you, and I, completely support the campaign.
Malika Fachrou for ELL Plus.
In just under 2 weeks, more than 60 UK universities are braced for the biggest strikes ever in the education sector. 14 non-consecutive days of strikes could see students losing up to 3 weeks of teaching.
The dispute is about lecturers' pension, which currently are at a fixed rate, but employers are changing them so they follow the stock market. The union says a typical lecturer could stand to lose up to £10,000 a year.
Earlier, we spoke to Joseph Tammer, the Campaigns and Activities Officer for the Goldsmiths Student Union, and asked him what the biggest concerns for students were about the upcoming strike.
It's been a bit of a haphazard approach from the college with regards to announcing the details of the strike. Information's been very slow to come out, and I think obviously not having the information has upset and angered a lot of students. I've received a lot of emails. I think the college could have done a lot better with regards to releasing information earlier on. Students are annoyed about the contact time that they're losing. It's an important time of the year. I guess that sort of the purpose of the strike is to cause as much disruption as possible, and this is the time of the year that will do that.
In the studio with us, watching that clip, is Becky Gardner, who has been an education editor at The Guardian and is now a senior lecturer here at Goldsmiths and also a member of the union that is going on strike.
Becky, thank you very much for joining us. So why are you taking action?
Well, as you explained in your introduction, there's a major attack on our pensions. Pensions are basically deferred wages, and this is a major change to our terms and conditions, which has been the employers are trying to push through with no negotiation. So I don't really think we have any option but to resist that. It will, as you said, the average lecturer will lose about £10,000 a year in retirement, which is obviously a very large portion of the pension.
So why are employers so determined to push this through?
As I see it as part of a sort of long strategy of marketising education, and this is the latest salvo really in that war. It's an attempt in this case to transfer the risk of pension schemes from the employer, where it belongs, onto the individuals, where it very much does not belong, in my opinion. So it's about transferring financial risk so that you can make more money from universities, I think.
But aren't staff at Goldsmiths already paid too much?
I would say very much no. I mean, on a personal level, as somebody who came from outside the higher education sector, from industry into education, I certainly took a big wage cut to come here, as I know many of my colleagues did. But also just on a factual basis, the salary bill overall for the college has increased since the introduction of student fees, but the salaries paid, the percentage of that which goes to teaching staff has slightly decreased. So student fees are hurting students, but they're also not going into lecturers' pockets, they're going elsewhere.
So won't this hurt students unnecessarily?
It certainly will hurt students, and we very much regret that. We had a meeting yesterday in the department in which I teach where students were professing support for the strike, but we're also expressing, as the person on your clip did, their anxieties, their very understandable anxieties about the impact on their education. What I would say is it's not unnecessary, sadly, because in order for us to resist what's being done to us by the employers, the students are necessarily hurt by that. If we withdraw our labour, that will hurt the students. What I would say to students is that the strike is unfortunately necessary because the employers won't negotiate. If the students are angry about it, they should direct that anger at the employers who are refusing to negotiate over this issue. And all it would take is for the employers to come back to the negotiating table and start talking seriously about changing their plans, and students wouldn't suffer at all.
Becky, Gardner, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
That was Becky Gardner from the University and College Union.
After the horrific fire at Grenfell Tower last year, hundreds of buildings across our boroughs were checked to see if they had the same cladding as the tower that caused so many tragic deaths. The Cityscape flat complex in Quashie-Idun was one of the buildings identified.
Cityscape is privately owned, and there has been a dispute as to who should pay the £2 million bill to replace the cladding. More than 6 months on, and it has been decided in a property tribunal that the leaseholders will have to foot the bill.
The residents will have to pay up to £31,000 each if the government does not intervene. What's more, the cladding will not be removed until this is paid. The management company, First Port, said they have no other funding options, but residents are angry about how things have been communicated. The judge has called it a really difficult situation, but also said that the tribunal won't set a precedent for any other affected buildings.
New research has revealed surprising facts about Deptford's history during World War I. It is now known that Deptford was the only council to try conscientious objectors in secret.
A professor at Goldsmiths College has written a play about the trials, which is also being made into a film. And today on ELL, we can bring you an exclusive preview with our reporter, Monika Ghosh.
The mayor asks a soldier to convince people to enlist.
What exactly is it you want me to do?
It's 100 years since World War I ended, and this play, now being made into a film, reveals new facts about Deptford's secret history, discovered by the writer, historian and lecturer Tim Crook.
The struggle to not engage in the violence that is war is heroic, it's complicated, it's political, it's philosophical, it's an incredible story.
As the Battle of the Somme raged in northern France, hundreds of people flocked here to Deptford Town Hall to enlist. Others refused, and they were called to the very same building to explain why.
According to new historical research, Deptford was the only place in England to have tribunals that weren't open to the public, and evidence shows they were biased against the people on trial.
Those were the conscientious objectors of the First World War, and they're the subject of Tim Crook's play Devils on Horseback, which is heading on national tour. It's here in these council chambers that the very secretive trials, with a ban against any media reporting, took place.
Suffragettes have devoted their energy.
Connor Matthews plays the mayor, who leads the trials against conscientious objectors.
But I would rather see a socialist with a gun and a bayonet over a lily-livered Quashie waving a white flag to the enemy.
It's on these pews that the so-called Conchies would have to wait their turn to face trial by the very fearsome Mayor Wayland, who's the mayor of Deptford at that time. Some of them were Mormons, some Jehovah's Witnesses, and some of them were socialists. Some of them were the only surviving sons, the family's last breadwinner, with fathers and brothers already killed at war. But what they all had in common was they all said no to going to World War I.
You'll do brilliantly.
It's not a conventional tale of war in trenches, but it shows the courage of the men who didn't enlist and were sent to prison for it.
Tim Crook shines a light on this secret part of Deptford's history, and he'll be taking it around the country, starting with the Tristan Bates Theatre this Monday. Monika Ghosh for ELL+.
Stay tuned, because coming up in the next half of the programme, We find out how Hackney is making LGBT History Month.
There's a huge risk of attack and of judgment and of nastiness.
And a pitch invader at Crystal Palace interrupts a battle close to the relegation zone.
And stay tuned for an exclusive preview of a shocking new exhibit at the Museum of London.
It was over 250 metres long, it weighed more than 11 double-decker buses, and it was threatening the very streets of Whitechapel.
Welcome back to ELL Plus. So sexuality and gender politics are expanding their reach. There are now over 70 recognized gender identities, loosely put under the umbrella of LGBTQI+.
In Hackney, there's a new exhibition exploring young people's complex experience of gender called Bedroom to Battleground. I went to have a look. Various members of the community have come together to celebrate LGBTQI+ History Month. This is the first time in a decade that the Hackney Museum has hosted an exhibition for the LGBTQ+ History Month. This event is not only about celebrating the present, but also remembering past pioneers who have paved the way.
Kiss her. Never let them tell you what to do. Never ever let them tell you who to do. There's only one voice, it belongs to you. Loved ones and friends are here to help you sing your tune.
I didn't know anyone who was queer, and when I felt very alone, it led to me meeting people who were queer and was a catapult into a world that I'm very much a part of now, which is very much part of my identity. I've made lifelong friends and been given opportunities, and it really has become the person that I am, so it was the beginning of me finding myself as a queer individual.
Located at the Hackney Museum, the exhibition came about after a year of collecting historical testimonies and artifacts from the community.
Let's keep Hackney queer, radical and creative. Have a fantastic evening and a fantastic History Month, and I look forward to continuing this conversation during the rest of the year. I think times have changed a lot, and we've had some really good collaboration with our schools, and if you go into schools now you see a very visual representation of LGBTQI pioneers and people that are out there changing, but I don't think you can ever do enough. And I think the testimonies that you see represented by Project Indigo show, if people are still not feeling safe in their bedrooms, if they're not feeling safe to show that they love someone or that they're going through changes in their identity and sexuality, then you've still much more to do.
This event was created by members of Project Indigo, a local youth group who offers free counselling to 13 to 25-year-olds living in Hackney. The exhibition was made possible by the artist Stick and the auction of his iconic Hackney Pride banner. Artist Liv Winter oversaw the project, and she performed some Project Indigo poetry.
Do you use my right pronouns behind my back, or does this illusion start to shatter? Well, I am not fantasy. I am not a commodity or a fetish. My gender is my own, and you will respect it. Thanks very much.
Josefine Henneberg, ELL Plus.
And now it's time for our regular roundup of Bhawon news. This week with Malika Fachrou, a reporter on our news website, East London Lines.
Malika Fachrou, thank you for joining us. So tell us a little bit more about Hackney's plan for the cemetery.
So it's the Abney Park, located in Stoke Newingland, and the park belongs to London's magnificent 7 Victorian cemeteries, and the park is now one step closer for a reward of almost £5 million. Now, the project was awarded £350,000 last week by the Heritage Lottery and by the Lottery Fund to develop the plans for a major restoration scheme.
Okay, and I heard that a 31-year-old from New Addington has just been jailed?
Yeah, he's been jailed for 70 years. The man from New Addington, which is located in Croydon, was convicted of rape and sexual assault, and the police was called by a newsagent Hackbridge on the 25th of March last year, and a woman, she said that she was being raped and sexually assaulted by this man, and she could only escape while he was sleeping, and when she escaped, she had only her dressing gown and her slippers on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Valentine's Day is soon, and it looks like it may not be so lucrative for the local florists. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Apart from people who will not have a Valentine's date, also local florists will be a bit sad on that day. Namely, the problem is with Valentine's Day, people spend a lot of money on flowers. Approximately 262 million spent on flowers on Valentine's Day last year. But the problem is local florists have not good chance against big chains. So little florists are always vanishing, and Simon Leckel, a royal celebrity florist, just told ELL that customer habits change, people get more comfortable in buying stuff in big supermarkets, and unfortunately for our local florists.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thank you, Malika Fachrou. That was Malika Fachrou from East London Lions. And now for sport. A crucial Premier League match was held at Selhurst Park Stadium on Sunday between Crystal Palace and Newcastle United.
That was the first match after the transfer window. With the absence of Crystal Palace's midfielder Bakary Sakho, a lot of football fans were worried about the big game. Vivian has this report.
On Sunday, thousands of fans flocked to Selhurst Park to watch Crystal Palace versus Newcastle United fight for their place in the Premier League. We can't show the match itself because of TV rights, but here is a dramatic moment when a man ran onto the pitch drinking a bottle of beer. Crystal Palace home match ended in a 1-1 draw, with Luka Milivojevic scoring from the penalty spot in 55th minute. After the match, fans from both sides had mixed opinions.
Second half was really exciting. First half was a bit dull. Yeah.
The draw isn't a disaster, but left feeling a bit disappointed.
Played well the first half,
but
the second half was terrible.
Crystal Palace and Newcastle United rank 14th and 16th in the Premier League. After this draw, both teams are out of the relegation zone. The Eagles manager Roy Hodgson says, "The team facing more tough games ahead. Foolish to think our problems are at an end. We've just given ourselves a chance." Vivian for ELL Plus.
This Saturday, Crystal Palace travels to Goodison Park to take on Everton. So we'll see whether the newly signed Alexander Sorloth will get off the subs bench.
And finally, what happens to all the stuff you pour down your sink and flush down the loo that you're not meant to? It turns into Fatberg. You might remember the Whitechapel Fatberg made headlines in September when it blocked the sewers of East London in a spectacular fashion.
Tomorrow, the Museum of London will open its doors to display a section of the Fatberg. ELL was invited along for an exclusive preview this morning, and I was lucky enough to go and see it for myself. This is the place to find out the ins and outs of our city's history. The Fatberg is a chapter that not many people can forget. So I'm here at the Museum of London to meet with the curator Vicky Sparks to find out more about this unique exhibition.
So Fatberg is a sewer blockage. It's made out of disgusting things: fat, oil, grease, but also wet wipes, nappies, diapers, and anything else that people throw in sewers that they really shouldn't.
And why was it so important for the Fatberg to be displayed here at the Museum of London?
So putting Fatberg on display is, for me, a really great way of starting a conversation, and a difficult conversation about us and our behaviours and what we throw away and what we do. So if I can start this conversation and people can reflect on their own behaviour, then for me that's a great job. I think Fatbergs are created by us putting things down the sewer system that they were never designed for. The fact is we're throwing things away, things like wet wipes, other rubbish are being disposed of, and they're creating these Fatbergs. So really it's saying that we need to change our behaviours.
Here it is, the last remaining piece of the Whitechapel Fatberg. It was actually discovered last September in the sewers of Whitechapel and was found to have a length of around 250 meters. Once it was weighed, it was said to be 130 tons, which actually equates to around 11 double-decker buses. If you look closely enough, you can see that it is in a congealed space because it's highly toxic, and there are also a few flies that have started developing. But the Fatberg says a lot about how we as a society choose to dispose of our waste. This will hopefully be a wake-up call for all Londoners. Quashie-Idun, reporting for ELL Plus.
Will you take me to the Fatberg on Valentine's Day?
Well, if that's what you want to see. So the exhibition is open from the 9th of February until the 1st of July. And that's all for now. And just to let you know, ELL Plus will be taking a break until the next news team takes over later in the year.
In the meantime, you can catch up with all our latest news on our website, eastlondonlines.co.uk, or follow us on Twitter at East London Lines. For now then, it's a goodbye from me, Josefine Henneberg.
And a goodbye from me, Quashie-Idun, as well as the whole ELL Plus team here at the Goldsmiths. Thank you very much for watching.